We're in.
We know we're live.
We're always, we're always live. We're always live. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. A hearty welcome from us to thee.
Hey, that sounds like a town crier or something, actually.
Yeah,
Hey, maybe you were a town crier in a past life.
Yeah, maybe I was. We should get a little bell. Ring the bell.
Yeah, that'd be quite cool. We definitely need to have a more exciting start to these podcasts, really, because even I'd be bored watching them.
Yeah, it's all out. We'll get a nice intro done. Jonno and Andy.
That's what we need. So if anyone's into intros or good with intros, drop us a line. We'll come up with something a bit inventive.
Yeah, if there's any intros and outros, we'll be up for it. Let me just kill this. How do I do that? I don't know. Comments. There we are. Right. So, hello, everybody. Thank you to those that are coming in already. Kamara, Dave, fabulous to see you. Kamara, good morning from the USA. USA, we're going to be in the USA on Thursday. Thursday afternoon, we shall be stateside across the pond. It'll be a long swim. However, we're very up for it and we can't wait to go. Dave in Wales, Agatha in Singapore, Elaine,
going to be there.
Sorry, mate.
I think Agatha's going to be there, isn't she?
No, Agatha's online. She's online.
Sorry, yeah.
And we have alternative healings coming in as well. So we have Ruth on the case. Ruth and Dave, fantastic pairing when it comes to SRT. Really, really good. And Elaine, good to see you as well. So our chat today is we were going to briefly describe and discuss what it was that got us from our normal lives into, I guess, our new normal being the spiritual world. Both Andy and I, you'll see from our chats really that we held and we still do hold a parallel life. Things happened at pretty much the same time, forcing us into different situations and different realms. And that biggest realm, of course, was the realm of what we would call 3D normality, into a realm of what the hell is happening and how is this going to pan out. So with that in mind, I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to let Andy come in and take over his chat from normal life into the realms of the spiritual.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting as well, because I mean, everyone watching these podcasts, everyone commenting, I guess most people have what we tend to call a normal life, basically, as in a kind of spiritual life. So I don't know that many people that were kind of born spiritual, that kind of followed spirituality through the transition of their kind of early childhood and then kind of teenage years into kind of adulthood. Most people that I meet, and certainly ourselves, the spiritual world came knocking at a certain point in your life, basically. So for me, that was kind of when I was back 30 or something, like 32. So I was, up until 30, I had no interest in anything to do with spiritual stuff. Thought everyone spiritual was completely bonkers. No interest in religion and religious stuff at all. Thought everyone was bonkers. So for me, life was just about the kind of practical 3D. You go into work. I was interested in kind of IT and computers and stuff, and that was my job. And obviously, I was living, again, what we kind of call this normal life, but I think the spiritual life is actually the normal life, and the other life is a kind of preconceived set of kind of blinkers on the front of the head that the horses tend to have, really. So that's how I kind of view normal life now, whereby you're not really seeing the reality of the space that you live. But for me, it was kind of get up every day, go to work, do things on weekends, do things with the children. I had sort of 2 young children, and then went through a divorce. And as part of that divorce happening, I met Jane, who's obviously my wife to be now, really. So we've been married 20 years. So she's put up with me for 20 years, basically. And she kind of saw me kind of go through that. Well, we both went through the spiritual transition because things were happening to her, and she was kind of, opening up to the spiritual aspect. But for me, it was kind of full on immediately, really. I kind of moved house, and I went from being not spiritual, having no spiritual experiences whatsoever, to moving into this new house in Chippenham in the UK on my own to start with, because I've just recently got divorced. And then the world went mad, basically. It was kind of, beds lifting up, things climbing into bed with me and touching me in places that I wasn't over keen to be touched by things I couldn't see. Heating coming on, hearing all of the kind of like banging and crashing sounds at night, seeing shadows under the bottoms of the doors. Water was disappearing from the toilets, which is still really bizarre. And I remember walking into my house, so it was like a 4-bed house with 2 bathrooms, basically. I remember walking in and opening the toilet door and seeing no water in the toilet bowl. And I was just perplexed as to where can the water have gone? The toilet bowls are empty, but they're porcelain and the water sits in the bottom. And I couldn't work it out. And to this day, I still look back and laugh at some of these things that were going on in this kind of crazy house. So for me, I just assumed the house was haunted and it was nothing to do with me. Well, of course, we all know now, and I'm sure Jonno's going to laugh, because obviously we realise that, we're bringing that ourselves. It's not the house, it's us, basically. So obviously I just happened to move into a house that was on an energetic ley line that spirit travel, and there were lots of things that kind of connected to me, and I started to see and feel things and go through quite a difficult time, really. So, I look back on it now and think it was fantastic training to do what we now do. And if I wouldn't have been through that experience, I probably wouldn't be sat here talking now at all. But there were times on that kind of journey when, such negative things are happening to you every day, every night. You go into sleep and you're frightened to death and you're kind of shaking, and, you're sleeping with the light on and sleeping with music playing and that kind of stuff. So for me, that transition from not spiritual to realizing there was this spiritual world that was there. And then I used to invite friends to come over and stay the night on weekends to see if they could experience all of these horrendous things that I was seeing and going through, because I was seeing imagery in my mind that was very negative, lots of kind of horror film type images in my kind of third eye that you tell people about, and people think, well, that's kind of like a Hollywood movie. And I was thinking, yeah, but I see this in my mind all the time. And as I'm doing things, I'm getting to see this horrific imagery, basically. So it kind of took a long time for me to realize that I wasn't particularly mad. I was having a spiritual experience, but there wasn't anywhere to go. And I was talking to a lot of people and connecting to a lot of people. And we're talking kind of 20 years ago. So the internet wasn't kind of full of help in the way that it would be now if you're having a kind of really negative spiritual experience and effectively being kind of haunted or tracked by negative things. And, when you kind of realize that's the case, you need specialist help. And there wasn't specialist help. A few of my mates said, "I'll just go and see the local vicar." And I thought, what's he going to do at 3 o'clock in the morning when things are climbing into bed with me and touching me physically, and I can feel that touch, and it's very negative, and it kind of brings the the fur up on your kind of legs and the hackles on the back of your neck, and there's this kind of fear that runs through you that you can't really describe to anybody unless they've had that experience. And that fear is a real fear. It's kind of really sort of a base level fear, effectively, that you kind of never forget once you felt it. So I didn't really want to turn to the local vicar in the church. I knew I couldn't go to the doctor to talk about those sorts of things. So I was kind of left really trying to find spiritual people. And eventually I got kind of directed to 2 people that were very prominent in my kind of experience. One was Michael Bryan, who, funny enough, was a psychic surgeon. And obviously I ended up, as Jonno did, being psychic surgeons. So it kind of obviously happened for a reason. And then we met a lady called Christina that was a medium, and she actually explained that we were being tracked by negative entities, and those entities were also trying to cause a lot of problems in my life and in Jane's at the time. So she started to teach us the concepts of what we needed to do and explain that we needed to protect ourselves spiritually. And we were paying her to clear the house. So, kind of, again, we do clearings for the people now as part of our business, but we needed those clearings done for us for the best part of sort of a year and a half until we got to grips with what was going on and how to do it. So for me, that was the kind of like, so then the normal life was still normal, was still working in IT, corporate life, corporate companies. And then weekends were kind of psychic surgery, Reiki, mediumship training and development, which kind of I spent 2 or 3 years doing that, going to classes and groups every weekend. to learn to be psychic and to develop the mediumship skills in a positive way. And obviously, eventually, Chen came through at the end of a Reiki session, introduced himself, and said that, I'd be working with him for the rest of my sort of living days in this incarnation. And I just laughed and thought, no, but I won't. And here I am, sort of years on, speaking to Chen every day, basically, and doing what we do. So it turns out Chen was right, and I was very wrong. So obviously, as part of that transition, I kind of held this kind of duality of life, working in the corporate sector 5 days a week, and then 2 days a week in the evenings doing spiritual work. And that kind of carried on then for years. Obviously met Terry, started to do the research with him, SRT type research, and then effectively kind of moved that on, bringing that forward to kind of where we are today from that perspective. So obviously meeting Jonno, and obviously both having that appetite to do this type of work. And then as Terry kind of departed and left, I've been working with him for sort of 10 years to do research. Then obviously John and I hit that conversation about, shall we restart SRT training, because we think we need to. The guides are definitely pushing us in that way. And do we have the appetite to put hundreds and hundreds of hours into building something from scratch, which effectively is the reality of where we are today, really. So hopefully that kind of frames my, where it began, kind of like my starting point, turn on point from a spiritual perspective. And then obviously spending so many hours and years learning to protect myself from negative things, it then makes you quite an expert in looking after yourself. And then, of course, you realize that the skills that you have can be translated into training and teaching people that are following the path and doing the same thing or having the same experiences as you, which is where most of you guys kind of come in, I guess, because you're here clearly for a reason. And that's what we're all here to kind of work through together. So I will hand you over to Jonno's parallel reality.
Yes, I mean, this is a question we get asked a lot. Lots of people say, how did you get into this? And kind of always give an abbreviated answer, just because the real answer kind of takes too long. And I always think people will get bored of it, because my experience is exciting to me, but not necessarily exciting to others. But basically, I grew up in a Christian household. I wouldn't consider myself to be Christian at all. I was forced to go to church. I've experienced a lot of Sundays spent in Sunday school and in churches and listening to what is said. And I started making my own mind up that it wasn't for me. I'm not saying that religion is bad in any way. I'm just saying that it didn't hit my notes and it didn't tickle my fancy. And I found myself more nature-based belief and celebrating the cycles of the year. And that was about as spiritual as I was. And I would describe myself as a skeptical believer. I was a believer in the spirit world because I knew too many people that had experiences and people that I trusted, people that I thought wouldn't lie or make things up. But I was skeptical because I hadn't believed it myself. I'm not the person that believes in everything that I hear. I do work it out for myself and I follow my gut instincts. And I've always done that, really, as much as I can. But if someone just comes up to me and says that black is black, I'll work it out for myself if it is. So I was married with my previous wife. We had 2 children, 2 young children, Rihanna and Harrison. And the house we lived in was a modern house. It was fairly newly built. And every evening at 12:15, before Rihanna was born, Harrison was in his bedroom. And Harrison would wake up every evening at 12:15. And he would then continue to be disturbed on the hour, every hour. And that lasted about 2 years. Rihanna came along. And when Rihanna was old enough, we took Harrison out of that bedroom and put him into a different bedroom. And Rihanna went in there. And Rihanna started waking up 12:15 every night. And then on the hour, every hour, until we took her out. And that lasted for about 2 years. So we had about 4 years of this every single night. Broken sleep every single night. And then it got to a stage where I tried to look at the energy of the room, tried to look at the energy of the house. And I went to a crystal shop and I explained that I had children that didn't sleep very well and that can I get some crystals? And I thought, here we go. I'm going to be tucked up for hundreds of pounds worth of crystals. And after spending about £7.50, I walked out with a bag of different tumblestones, being told by the owner of the shop, no, you don't need anything else. It's all about the energy. It's not about how much you spend. So I was very pleased with that, very pleased with her, the advice that I was given, and I put them in the bedroom. And that was about 3 days before everything kicked off. And by everything kicking off, there was one evening, in fact, it was October 2004, I think, just a week before Halloween. And 12:15 happened, and Rihanna, the youngest daughter, came into the bedroom, saying that there's a little girl in her room, and the little girl scares her. So pulled Rihanna into bed, gave her a cuddle, told her that the little girl was there because Rihanna is so sweet and so nice. And the little girl just wants to play and doesn't realize that it's bedtime. And with that, Rihanna went back to sleep. And I stayed awake pretty much for the rest of the night, wondering what the hell is going on. Rihanna was about 2.5, so there's no way on earth that she would make all this up. So the next morning, I spoke to Rihanna, and Rihanna described to me how this little girl looked: blue dress, white pinny blonde hair, roughly the age of her big cousin, who was 9 at the time. So with that, my then wife took the kids away for a few days, which was already planned, went to a family meeting, family event, and they tutored off to there. So I took a little bit of time out of work. I owned my own business. I took a little bit of time out of work, and I went back to this crystal shop. And I said, please, can you help me? I spoke to you the other day about children that can't sleep. I need bigger crystals. And with that, the shop owner just said to me, I think you also need a cup of tea, my darling. And with that, she made me a cup of tea, and we stood in her shop chatting, and I explained to her everything that was happening. She then said to me that it wasn't crystals that I needed, it was a medium, and that she recommended a very, very good medium by the name of Wendy. So I took Wendy's number, took her name, went home, and I thought, well, I'll keep this for a couple of days, see what happens. Later that evening, I returned from work, and being October in the UK, it was very, very dark. So I got in from work, and I had a camper van at the time, and I lived on Hayling Island, which is right near to the beach. So I was going to grab a takeaway, sit in the camper van, and then pop down to the beach for a nice evening of chilling out. And as I went home, I got undressed, walked into the bathroom to grab a quick shower. All the lights were on in the house except the bathroom. And as I walked into the bathroom, I pulled the cord to turn the lights on, as I walked into the bathroom, I just said out loud, are there any spirits here? And as I did so, I pulled the cord. And when I pulled the cord, all the lights in the house went out. And the house was in complete darkness at exactly the moment I pulled the cord. So within 30 seconds, I was completely dressed. I had the quilt, my pillow, and basically I escaped the house, ran into my camper van, and I slept the night in my camper, wondering what the hell was going on with the house. So I spent the night in the camper van the first night. The second night I went back into home, and I slept with the TV on. I had no idea what was happening at all. And previously, whenever I slept in the kids' room when they were unwell, I always used to dream of a dog, and that dog used to be a vicious dog barking, chasing the children. This is also relevant. So after a few days, the kids came back with their mum, and I had a chat with Rihanna again about this little girl. And at that point, Rihanna said, there's also the dog that comes into my room as well. And at that point, I knew that there was something a little bit more here than I understood, and things that I had to deal with. So I had a chat with my ex-wife, and basically decided that I'm the sort of person that if a child needs help, I always say yes. It doesn't matter whether I believe in it or not. I always stand up and help kids if I can. So it was a Saturday, and I called Wendy, and I didn't really know what to say other than the fact that I needed help and that my house had a visitor. So Wendy then started going through a few things. I have a brother in spirit. My brother passed, and my brother died when he was 2 years old. And Wendy started talking to me about my brother and was factually correct. And then basically said, right, now I've got your attention. I can help you. This is what's happening with your house. This is what's going on. And she basically described the little girl to me exactly the same way that my daughter Rihanna did. So I don't believe in circumstances, I never have, but this was certainly circumstantial. And I asked for Wendy to come over to the house to clear the house, and she couldn't do it for 3 weeks because she was busy. And at the time, owning my own business, I was earning a fair amount of money. And I basically said to her, look, I don't really care what the cost is. I'd like you to come over this afternoon and work it. And she was like, no, can't do it. Fully booked 3 weeks. And I don't do this for money. And I was like, look, I don't think you understand. I can afford for you to come over here this afternoon. I'd like you to come over this afternoon. And anyway, Wendy wouldn't have it. And then at the end of it, as we're finishing, we booked a time in for the 3 weeks. And at the end of the conversation, I said to her, just Wendy, can you quickly tell me before we go, what's the connection here? Is it the house or is it my children? And she said, no, my sweetheart, the connection's you. So I was like, oh, and that opened the eyes a little bit. And she said, in fact, this is not for me to come to you. This is for you to do this work. Spirit have been knocking on your door for a number of years, and you haven't taken the call. This is now where they're becoming obvious and they're distracting your children because they know that by distracting your children, they will get your attention. And then she started naming a number of other incidents in my life. Then I said, yeah, that was true. And it was all where spirit were apparently knocking on my door. So anyway, she told me what to do. She told me about protection, the first time I'd ever heard about psychic protection. And the following day, the children were taken out for the day, and I sat on the floor in my home, closed my eyes, and I did the work. And all of a sudden, this shooting light went up the stairs, and the whole energy of the house changed. So all good, all positive. I relaxed. I phoned Wendy. Wendy confirmed the little girl had gone to the light. Then my children came home. And the big test for me is not what Wendy said, it's not what I say, it's whether my children slept through. 4 years, 12:15 every night they were awake. That day was actually Halloween, and they'd been out trick-or-treating with the friends and neighbours. And then they came back. Like I say, the energy in the house had changed. And that night was the first night in 4 years that my children slept through without any disturbance, without being woken, without screaming, without all the hysteria that we used to get. So for me, that was the evidence of something had changed. And then the following morning, Rihanna came down, quite scared again. And we were like, what's going on now? What's happening now? And she said, the little girl has gone home. So I said, okay, how do you know that? She said, I just know. The little girl has gone home. So I said, oh, that's very nice. That's nice to hear. Well done, Rihanna. I said, but why are you scared? And she said, because the doggy is still there. So I cried. We cleared the little girl, but we didn't do anything about the dog. So that night, so I tried to phone Wendy, couldn't get through to Wendy. That night, the kids were asleep in bed. Everything was okay. Around 12:15, Rihanna woke up. And instead of screaming out, she just came into the bed and just cuddled me. And she said that she has seen the little dog again. So I was like, right, okay. And I said, what was the doggy doing? I said, did it scare you? And she said, yes. So I said, what is the dog doing? She said, the dog was playing with the balloons. Now, I had put balloons in the house when I was trying to talk to this little girl, because it's just a weird way I work. I was trying to do fun things for that a little girl might find fun and trust me, so I can help her go into the light. But I didn't tell anybody about the balloons, and I certainly didn't tell Rihanna about the balloons. And now Rihanna is telling me that the dog is playing with the balloons. So Rihanna was cuddling me, went back to sleep, or I thought she'd gone back to sleep. And I'm lying there all through the night, again, fully awake. And then just these most amazing flashes of light started happening through the house, I guess for about 10 minutes. Just the most incredible white lights you could ever see. And whatever you're imagining as I talk about white lights, they're not white enough. They're not bright enough. These were small sparks of light that lit the whole house in the middle of the night. Incredible. And I sat in bed again, completely wondering what the hell is going on, not wanting to get out of bed. I knew it wasn't burglars, I knew it wasn't anything like that, but this is what was happening. It was real. And I spent another night in bed completely awake, without sleeping. I spoke to Wendy the next morning, and I was like, Wendy, I need your help. And she was like, look, I'm still coming over in 3 weeks' time. I'll come and have a chat with you. So anyway, when we were having breakfast with Rihanna then told me that the spirit lights had come down and they collected the dog because the dog had been forgotten, and they didn't want the dog to be forgotten. And with that, she saw the doggy lifted up and go through the ceiling back to the spirit world when I thought she was asleep. But she told me all about that. And then Wendy came over 3 weeks later and just said that this is an opportunity now, an opportunity for you to change your life. You don't have to take it, but if you do, your life will change. Your circle around you will completely change. Your friends will change. The situation in your life now, as you know it, will change. Your business will change, and you will go on to do some amazing things. And she went into it in a little bit more detail, all of which have become true. And then from that conversation, Wendy became my mentor. I had hundreds and hundreds of lessons with Wendy. I know Andy sat in circle developing for a number of years. Personally, I was in development circles every week for about 11 years, developing healing, developing mediumship, developing trance, to a point where I went from being a sitter learning to working with Wendy as kind of like her number two in circles, really, and then doing demonstrations of trance with her. At the same time, I was learning Reiki. That Reiki then turned into trance healing turned into psychic surgery turned into clearance. And this is where my personal business is now: psychic surgery and spirit release therapy, remote spirit release. Probably around 2015, 2014 into 15, I moved to Wiltshire. I didn't know anyone around here. All my connections previously had gone, and I moved in with Louise, having lost my marriage 6 years earlier, which again was predicted. So I was sort of not struggling really, but I didn't know anybody spiritual around my area. I didn't know what was going on. And then Louise told me that there's some fella by the name of Andrew Porter, who apparently was a psychic surgeon, who's doing a demonstration of psychic surgery literally 3 minutes from my house. So we got to go. We got to experience this, see what happens. As soon as I walked into the room where Andy was preparing for an evening of demonstration, I knew there and then that I would work with Andy. Never spoken to him before, never seen his work, but I knew I would work with him. So anyway, we took our place and we sat down and we watched a really good evening of psychic surgery demonstration. And then normally when you do a demonstration, something like this, there's always a number of people that come up and always want to talk to you. And as Andy was talking to these people, I didn't have that need to talk to him because I knew that I would know him. I knew that I would work with him. But that evening, I was approached by a very smart gentleman in a suit and a bow tie, glasses, who introduced himself to me as Dr. Terence Palmer. And he told me that he worked with Andy in something called spirit release therapy. And had I heard of it? And I said, no, it's not something I knew. And he explained it. And I said, oh yeah, I do very similar work. I do very similar work doing this, and this. And that's where Terry then started talking to me about this protocol and about how they're working. And this is then why I knew I would be working with Andy, because what Terry was saying to me hit home completely. And literally a couple of months later, I did the course with Dr. Palmer. Andy obviously was already there, been working with Terry a lot longer before I did. And I was very lucky to be one of maybe 3 or 4 mediums that Terry worked with regularly. And the 1,000 cases that we talk about that were recorded, I think I came in at about 350. The order number 350, working through to 1,000. And of course, during that whole process, I built up a relationship with Andy, realized really that we have a very, very similar life. And we have for anyone that knows us, we have the same opinion on pretty much everything. We're very, very similar. And then we had that sad passing of Terry. And I guess it's fair to say, Andy, that SRT went, or certainly what we knew at the time, went into the wilderness for 12 months as we were working out, are we going to do anything people were asking for teaching and for training? And then with me, my operation that I didn't know I needed 18 months ago, 2 years ago actually, 2 years ago now, led to being in intensive care with White Hawk, going through all that experience, and then basically realizing that I couldn't do my office job anymore and I had to do something spiritual. And that's where White Hawk came in. I started talking about setting up a college, a spirit release college. So when I came out of hospital, I was kind of looking around, looking at different names, spirit release colleges, looking at domain names, and of course another name for a college, a far better name for a college is an academy. And this is how we got the name Spirit Release Academy. I bought the domain name. I messaged Andy and said we need a chat. Had a chat with Andy on Zoom or whatever it was at the time. Saw Spirit Release Academy. And that was the birth of what we have now. And here we are, 2 years later, because the academy started in November 2 years ago. A year later in November, we held our first in-person course. Our first training with the academy took a year to get going. And then a year later, in October, we're going to America on Thursday to do training. And we're hoping to have really good news in November this year. So lots of things have happened in the last 2 years. This is going to be our third in-person course. We already have an online training going as well. And I think it's fair to say, mate, that the last 2 years, and in fact, probably the last 20 years, has been absolutely bonkers getting us where we are today, almost ready to pack a suitcase and fly out, doing something we're very, very lucky but completely passionate about.
Yeah, I think that frames it so well, John, didn't it, really? Like you said, when we had that conversation and we talked about creating something on the back of what Terry was doing, really. And we both, well, I mean, I'd been watching and you've been watching, Terry's work and how, Terry was passionate to the point that he put every waking hour into doing this work, really, and trying to sort of propagate it into the medical profession, into psychiatry, into mental health. And every turn he made, he was sort of blocked in one way or another, because obviously there isn't that many people that are receptive to this type of work because it's spiritual. But effectively, the stats speak for themselves. And Terry thought if he had stats that proved this works, for such a massive percentage, 80% of people feel positive difference. He thought if he took that to psychiatry, into mental health, and into the medical profession, he would be kind of accepted with open arms, and they would at least want to do some research and to kind of work with us to actually see, clients and people. Does this work? How does it change them? The impact it has, that kind of thing. But we kind of saw that he was always up against blocks every which way, really. And then he became quite despondent and decided that he would just take the work around the world himself and run courses. So he went to Argentina and Michigan and worked with some Buddhist monks and things in Michigan. It was very obvious that, one-man band was never going to be able to carry the burden of this type of work, really. And I think when you bought the domain name and we had that conversation, that was the conversation I had with Jane afterwards, was, okay, if we're going to do this, if I'm going to put time and effort to doing this with Jonno, it's just not going to be a kind of, a half-baked thing, or that we do it properly and become the best in the world at what we do, because we've been doing this for 10 years. So we're pretty well experienced and we know what we're dealing with and how it works and how to do it. But doing the work is easy. Building an academy and actually building a training course online and connecting to people and doing all of the other things that require, to happen to kind of move that forward is a massive ask. And I think at the time I spent quite a lot of time deliberating over, did I want to put time and energy into that? Because obviously I have my normal job and we were still doing our psychic surgery, and Jane and I were quite busy doing our own stuff, as you were at the time. And I think if we look back now, mate, 2 years, and think if we'd have known what was coming, I think there may have been different decisions possibly made, because there has been it has been a roller coaster ride to a certain degree. But it sort of feels like we're over the hump now, and we're kind of on that downward trajectory whereby everything's getting easier, things are falling into place. The teams in Spirit are lined up, and we've got a massive team in Spirit now doing this work very fast. And I think that's the bit that I kind of find quite passionately fantastic, really, is that I know that if you and I take our last breath today and we disappear, there's others now coming behind us that are going to continue this work. And that spiritual team of White Hawk, Chen, and the guides, and Terry, of course, as our kind of celestial overseeing management guru type position, this is always going to now carry on, because we've got the traction, the snowball's rolling down the hill, and it's just putting more and more of the right people in. And that's kind of what makes it's so kind of interesting to be part of. And I'm pretty sure most of the people that we work with, the practitioners, would tell you that, from coming to meet us and doing the training to where they are now, their whole life has changed dramatically in a positive way. And of course, their families and things. So it is, it's something you and I don't look back and talk about the positive aspects of what we've done and how we've done it. We look at the problems that we're trying to resolve every day as things come up. We're trying to plough the field, and get things growing and get the right seeds in the right kind of holes and stuff. But if we look back, I think we probably do need to sit and have a beer at some point and raise our glasses, because SRA is a huge transformative organisation in the spiritual field, and I don't know of any other organisations that have kind of come online so fast that have done this type of thing, which shows you we are sort of spirit supported, really. And that is, it's quite a humbling place to be.
I think, yeah, I think one of the things, you're quite right, mate. I think one of the things is that we always say that it would be nice to just take some time out where we can go back, have a beer, think about how things have been. And, even in the spiritual realms, spiritual work, things aren't always easy. We've had some huge challenges come to myself and Andy when we were building the academy. And certainly as we started doing our training, we had huge challenges to overcome for the academy. But the one thing that Andy and I are very, very strong about is the protection of the academy and the work that we do, the protection of the practitioners that we have that work with us ethically and professionally. And if you want to test us, we're unbreakable. So that has come through. We've got a really good energy behind us in the academy. We've got really good people working in the academy. And it would be nice, mate, just to grab a couple of hours, just go and chill out, grab a couple of beers and just look back. Because we don't ever get the time to look back. As you say, we're always looking at trying to resolve things, trying to make things smoother for our practitioners, smoother for the clients, smoother for the students, smoother for the website, smoother for the tech, smoother for our admin team, smoother for our social media team. We always look at making things smoother for other people. And it would be nice just to sit back and just acknowledge really what has been created with our celestial board above, guiding us, helping us. And even when the guidance and help isn't very obvious to us, We then get Terry with a sharp boot up the bum, pushing us forwards, always forwards. So this is how it all began. It began with a bit of disruption in our lives, a bit of a situation that both of us had to sort out individually. And both of us then were led to people that were going to teach us, train us. And, even now we have people say to us, I want to learn spiritually. I want to learn how to do this. And we say, yeah, it takes years. And it does. It takes years. Hundreds.
I think it's a really good point as well. You made, when you talk about people's lives, if you look at both the worst times of our lives that were very traumatic and they were quite prolonged, it wasn't a 5-minute thing. We're talking of years of difficulties and things. When you look back, you think, God, if I didn't have that really bad experience, I wouldn't be passionately now doing what I love to do every day and where I am. All of you guys that are going through some shit and aggravation, just kind of think one day you're probably going to look back and think about that divorce or accident or trauma or whatever it is that's happening in your life now that's so negative. It could be the biggest thing that, augments change in a positive way for you moving forward. Because I know if you spoke to myself and probably you, mate, 20 years ago, I would have run away from the spiritual stuff that was happening as fast as I could. But because I had to embrace it and I had to learn to protect myself and work through it, and it's affecting you and your family, it is the kind of massive turning point in your life that obviously you've chosen yourself to be there because that's going to put you onto the place that you need to be. And I think, it's a good thing that you've sort of brought that up.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? There's, when I go back to the most drastic changes at the time when I had the divorce, that divorce took me to a very different place that I am now. I lost my business. I lost my home. My children were moved away from me. And I was sleeping on floors. I was homeless for a year. So, yeah, the one thing that I had always around me was my mentor, Wendy, who did nothing but support me always, gave me money, did everything, bought me food. And I always had that development to try and take me away from areas where I didn't really want to be. And now, of course, we're in a very different position where we're helping people that experience the sort of things that you experienced, Andy, and experience the sort of things that I had as well. And we're now very lucky and very privileged to be able to pass that knowledge on. Between us, we have 40 years of this experience, and coming together and being able to share that experience. And people that come on our courses, they realize that we don't hold anything back. We tell them everything. We're not, I've heard it so many times before, you probably have as well, Andy, that when you learn from someone, they don't want to teach you everything. They want to hold things back. Andy and I don't. You get both barrels, and we'll teach you everything we possibly can because we want you to be at least as good as us and better.
Yeah, better. Because that's the thing about a teacher, isn't it? If you teach a subset of what you know, then your students aren't going to be able to kind of come up to the level very quickly, although they will over time. If you teach them exactly what you know, then effectively they can kind of obviously move forward and take that experience. And I think that's what I've started to see a lot of practitioners we're talking to now on a daily basis, talking about their experiences clearing clients, and they're teaching me things. And I think, well, I taught you how to do this stuff, or we taught you how to do this stuff from our experience, and now we're learning from them. And that's in a year, right? That's like 1 year of, some of these people that are kind of putting their soul and their life into doing this work, even part-time, but they're teaching us things. And that's kind of incredible, really, to think, what kind of privilege to be in a position that you can kind of hold someone's hand and get them to a certain point, and then off they go, and you kind of watch them walk in front of you rather than behind you. Yeah. Because there's too many teachers, as you said, that don't teach all of the skill set because they're concerned that they're competition, but we're supposed to be here working for spirit, so there shouldn't be any competition at all.
No. And we've never had that. We live about a 25-minute drive from each other. And we do exactly the same work. before we met, we did exactly the same work: psychic surgery, spirit release. And when we met, there's never been any conflict. There's never been any competition between what we do. We pass people between each of us. We always work together. And I think what you're saying just there, mate, is that we're very lucky because we're attracting some really, really, really good practitioners into the academy. The first phase ones are coming through. The second phase ones are doing some fantastic work. And I have no doubt that within the next few months into next year, you'll start seeing more of their faces come through as well. And this is where it always used to be the experiences and teaching of Andy and I. Now we have a batch of very, very strong, batch is the wrong word. We have a tribe of very, very strong practitioners. And on our Wednesday evenings, we always share experiences. We learn, we move forward, and we progress. And this is just how we are. And it's how it's built the academy. We're lucky.
Perfect. I think that's the thing. I think, from my perspective, the next thing, I know on our list really is to start training, other people to be trainers of this work effectively, and, start to kind of envelope that type. So we've got obviously students are coming through doing the work, and they've involved that or kind of augmented their existing practice to use this type of protocol. Because that's why it's worked so well. Because no matter what you do as a kind of healing holistic practice, in whatever field you're in, you can use this protocol before what you do yourself. Because once you've cleared someone, the client's clear spiritually and holistically and sovereign, then you find whatever you do works so much better because you're just dealing with that person, and that's that kind of conscious energy and intelligence, rather than some intrusive aspect that has to have some sort of intervention performed to make it clear and clean. And that was Terry's view of the world, basically. Before he passed, it was the soul needs clearing before we can move forward at all. And this is why he was so keen to get into psychiatry and the mental health area, to start to explain so many people are exhibiting spiritual problems, but they're not being dealt with spiritually. We're missing out that link is not there yet. It's not really there for different reasons, but this is the bit that we're going to kind of bring to the table. And this is, I think, is where, if we go forward 12 months, I wouldn't be surprised if in a year's time we're doing research with lots of, organizations that are going to have to look at the data and adopt the same intelligent aspect that we understand that the spiritual aspects are part of people's problems. And better than that, we can resolve them with a very, very powerful but quick procedure that works with spirit. It kind of is a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, that's it. And just going back to Terry, his phrase that you touched on, I can't remember it word for word, but it was something to the effect of medical intervention will never work when there's a broken spirit. This work is vital. It's got to start somewhere.
Yeah, it was wounded soul or something, wasn't it? Cleaning the wounded soul or something.
Yeah.
There is wording,
We'll
get
that quote and we'll have it on the website.
Yeah, we need to do that, definitely.
Yeah, Andy and I still very much look at him as a kind of leader in that way.
That's because he's still kicking us up the ass, mate.
Because he's still banging on the table.
I still hear the same words in my ear, basically. Not in my ear, but he still uses the same language.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how it started. That's how it all began. The question that both of us get a lot. So we thought we'd come on and answer it. So, is there a podcast on Thursday?
We're flying, mate, I think. So I'm assuming
not with us.
Probably not, unless Natasha's doing one, possibly.
Let's have a quick look.
We've actually got a podcast schedule. Can you believe? That's how good the media team are behind the scenes now. Sort of Natasha, Tara, Gabby. We've got some great people that are doing some things behind the scenes. Maggie and Vanessa trying to hold together the admin aspects of what we do. So we've actually got to the point that we've actually got a spreadsheet with what we're supposed to be doing, when we're supposed to be doing it, which is a huge leap forward from us, really.
Exactly that. So we do have information coming out. next week there won't be podcasts on Tuesdays and Thursdays that we do. It might be that Natasha was able to do something, but we're unsure at this stage. But Andy and I will come on, and we will have little chats throughout the week. Because next week, in case you didn't know, and I'm sure you did, there will be in Ithaca, New York, doing our third phase of training, in-person training. We're very, very much looking forward to that. And exciting times as, again, the Spirit Release Academy takes another step forward, doing things that we never thought would happen. And here we are doing it all. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for listening to us once again. Hope you've enjoyed the 50 minutes with us.
Cheers,
We'll
mate.
see you soon. And take care, guys. Bye-bye.